The much-loved Subaru XV has a fresh look and a new name. This is the new Subaru Crosstrek. It's just arrived in Australia. Let's see what it's like. The Subaru Crosstrek has big shoes to fill in Australia, tasked with replacing the much-loved XV in Subaru's lineup. A vehicle that has amassed more than 100,000 local sales since it launched in 2012. Based on the all-encompassing Subaru global platform, the Crosstrek is offered in 5 grades in total, including 2 hybrid variants which sit atop the lineup. Sharper styling, new technology and refreshed interiors headline the changes, coinciding with minor price increases across the board. Irrespective of petrol or hybrid grades, the new Crosstrek measures almost identically to the XV before it, bearing evolutionary styling tweaks at the front and rear. Now unfortunately the hybrid powertrain wasn't quite here in time for the national launch, so we're spending all our time in a 2-litre 4-cylinder boxer engine. It develops 115 kilowatts and 196 newton meters, and it sends drive to all 4 wheels via a CVT transmission. Now Subaru has ruled out the new turbo petrol engine available in the Outback, but they are considering a larger capacity engine that's available overseas in the Wilderness model. Arguably the biggest point of difference is actually inside. There's a new 11.6-inch center touchscreen display, but largely the same origins in terms of layout. The cabin feels really well put together. There's a great amount of storage. And what I like about the infotainment system, I'm not huge on using the infotainment screen as your sole sort of reliance for basic functions, but this still has a nice array of physical buttons and switchgear, which means minimal distraction on the road and a system that's really easy to use. The Crosstrek covers off all of our basic infotainment checklist as standard, with the exception of a head-up display. Safety is likewise well sorted, with every item covered as standard. Rear seat space is adequate for a couple of adults or little ones alike. The area goes without rear air vents, but does offer an open glass house and comfortable seats. On paper, the Crosstrek loses about 20 litres worth of luggage space compared with the XV predecessor, though there is enough room for a couple of full-size suitcases. The petrol version offers a space-saver spare tyre, while hybrid models make do with a puncture repair kit. So if you were a fan of the predecessor Subaru XV driving experience, well then I have some good news, because this new 3rd generation model, the Crosstrek, is largely the same, and that's despite a new platform and a new engine. There are of course some tangible little handling improvements, but no wholesale departures from the Subaru XVs before this. And for me, that's a little bit of a disappointment, because I kind of expect a little bit more, just in terms of, firstly, the engine, which we'll get to, but secondly, the noise and vibration and outright handling traits of the Subaru Crosstrek. So we're on a pretty rugged, pretty honest drive route today that takes us from Sydney up to Newcastle and return. So there's some very honest roads, which have been absolutely smashed with rain and everything else. So lots of road work, lots of patchwork services. There's a lot of noise coming in the cabin. Road noise and engine noise are probably a little bit subdued compared to the predecessor XV, but in terms of wind noise and ambient rolling noise inside the cabin, there's still a little bit going on. The ride, I think, in large part is quite good. It kind of reflects inconsistencies in the road accordingly through the chassis. It's fairly athletic during changes in direction. There's a quick left, right. But the high riding stature of the Subaru Crosstrek isn't infallible. And what I mean by that is, if you, like then, go through a corner with mid-corner bumps, it quickly upsets the balance of this car. So naturally, it will push weight to the outside haunches and hold steady through a corner. But a couple of little mid-corner bumps are just enough for the rear of the car to skip out and for the outright balance of the car to be upset. That's kind of a symptom of it being an SUV, but it's quite noticeable, this, in the presence of
like-minded rivals. But there is an upside to it, and we'll get to it during the off-roading section. The other point worth making, it isn't too hard to exceed the threshold, the grip threshold of these tyres. But all things considered, it's not a race car, it's not a sports car, so even when there is, you know, a little bit of sliding underneath, you still feel you got a good gauge of what the car is doing front to rear. More than anything though, the big disappointment with the Subaru Crosstrek is its engine. It's a 2-litre naturally aspirated boxer in this instance, and I feel like it's such a missed opportunity. We've just tested the new 2.5-litre turbo petrol in the Subaru Outback, and my question is straight away, why is it not in this car? Because unfortunately, this boxer engine with its sort of lack of inherent torque combined with a CVT transmission, it's a throwback to Subaru's 8-10 years ago. It just doesn't take the game forward in terms of performance, in terms of efficiency. We're averaging about 8 litres per 100 Ks. Certainly nothing to sneeze at, but given where the rest of the marketplace is going, a turbocharged engine and even a torque converter transmission, I feel like would be a much happier marriage in this car, and more refined, better performance. Instead, you're getting a car which gets up to speed fairly well. It builds speed progressively, but as soon as you ask any more for this drivetrain, it reverts to high revving, high noise, and not a lot of go forward. I'll give you a brief summation of it here. So I'll slow down to 70 Ks an hour if I give it a bootful. There's less engine noise coming through the cabin, and there's 100 there. So there's far less engine noise coming through the cabin. That has been improved, but the engine just doesn't have the response or the acceleration that you kind of expect. You know, given the price increases, given the fact this is an all-new engine on an all-new global platform, it just feels very much like the XV before it.
Where the Crosstrek does come into its own relative to the rest of the segment is off the tarmac, as we discovered during a short off-road component at the launch.
So where a lot of that higher ground clearance and underbody tech begins to make more sense is away from the beaten track. This certainly isn't a vehicle you think of when you think of four-wheel driving, and I wouldn't call it a dedicated four-wheel drive, but to me it's been surprising just how far it has gone away from sealed roads. We're at the Wadigan National Park between Sydney and Newcastle, and we've really been able to take advantage of the wheel articulation, the ground clearance that you do get, and also the electronics, particularly with the X Mode driving suite. Spending a bit of time at the moment in the snow dirt setting in particular. When one wheel's lofted, it's really clever, the system. It's able to engage the opposite wheel to be able to get drive and pull you out of tricky situations. The snow dirt mode in particular works at under 20 kilometers an hour. You can kind of hear the brains of the car, particularly when it does need to send drive to one wheel in particular, doing their thing and helping you out of a tricky situation. I wouldn't say that this sort of qualifies as a dedicated four-wheel drive, it doesn't, but I think just knowing what the car is capable of, and particularly if you're sort of adventure minded, you go to the snow, there might be a more remote mountain bike trail that you need to get access to. It's sort of nice assurance knowing that the XV will get you there.
All in all, we'd say the Crosstrek feels most at home during casual touring and adventuring. It feels slightly more refined than before, with equipment changes that add to the inherent crossover appeal.
Those changes are enough to take the Subaru Crosstrek forward and indeed differentiate it from its XV predecessor. It certainly doesn't rewrite the rule book, but with a huge buying base out there, you know it's going to be an overnight hit.